Hey guys, tonight we begin with the surprisingly mundane and utterly unremarkable world of the humble wombat. Those pudgy marsupials who waddle through Australian bushland with all the excitement of watching paint dry. While documentaries try to make them seem fascinating, the truth is, wombats live the most boring existence imaginable. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The first time you venture beyond the burrow entrance, you pause at the threshold like someone deciding whether to answer the door when they're not wearing pants. The outside world stretches before you in all its overwhelming mediocrity. Grass that looks suspiciously like more grass, dirt that appears to be dirt, and sky that's doing that annoying blue thing it does. Your first step is less of a step and more of a controlled fall forward. Gravity, it turns out, is not your friend. Neither is coordination. You tumble into the world with all the grace of a furry bowling ball, immediately face-planting into what you'll later learn is called ground. The dirt tastes like, well, dirt. But there's something oddly satisfying about it. Like nature's own crackers, getting lost in your own backyard becomes an art form you accidentally master. The burrow entrance, which seemed impossibly obvious just moments ago, now appears to have vanished into some sort of cosmic joke. You waddle in increasingly frantic circles, each revolution taking you further from home and closer to what you're convinced is certain doom. Panic sets in around the third minute, when you realize you've traveled nearly 10 feet from safety. Your mother watches this performance from the burrow entrance with the patient resignation of someone who's seen this exact show performed by 6 previous offspring. She doesn't intervene. This is wombat parenting at its finest. Benign neglect with occasional snorting commentary. The art of eating dirt by accident becomes your first real skill. It's surprisingly easy. You reach for what looks like a promising tuft of grass, miss by roughly the width of your own head, and end up with a mouthful of Australia's finest topsoil. The technique improves over time, though improves might be generous. By week 2, you're only eating dirt every third bite instead of every second bite. Learning to distinguish food from not food proves to be an ongoing challenge that will honestly plague you for the rest of your life. That brown thing? Could be a root, could be a stick, could be the fossilized remains of a beetle. Only one way to find out, and it usually involves disappointment and the immediate need to spit something out. But it's the butterflies that really mess with your head. Your first butterfly encounter happens on a Tuesday morning, though you obviously have no concept of Tuesday or morning, or even time in any meaningful sense. You're grazing with the focused determination of someone trying to figure out IKEA instructions when this thing appears in your peripheral vision. It's orange. It moves. It defies every law of physics you've accidentally observed in your short life. Where you are round and grounded and committed to staying in contact with the earth at all times, this creature is thin and airborne, and apparently immune to the gravity that keeps trying to flatten you into pancake shape. You stop chewing. This is significant, because you never stop chewing. The butterfly lands on a flower roughly 3 feet away, which might as well be 3 miles given your current mobility limitations. It sits there, opening and closing its wings like it's applauding its own existence, completely unaware that it's just triggered your first existential crisis. Why can it fly and you cannot? What cosmic injustice determined that some creatures get to float around looking pretty while others get to be? Whatever you are, is there a purpose to being earthbound and rectangular when such ethereal creatures exist? The butterfly, oblivious to your philosophical turmoil, flutters away to bother some other creature having a perfectly ordinary day. You watch it disappear with the kind of longing usually reserved for unattainable snacks. This encounter plants a seed of discontent that will grow into a lifelong appreciation for the absurd inequalities of existence. Some animals get to fly, others get to run fast, a few get to climb trees or swim or do other showing-off nonsense. You get to be excellent at staying put. But there's something to be said for staying put, you realize as you resume your interrupted grazing. The grass doesn't judge you for being slow. The dirt doesn't care that you're not particularly bright. The burrow will always be there when you eventually find your way back, offering the kind of unconditional acceptance that flying creatures probably never experience. Besides, butterflies probably can't eat grass as efficiently as you can. They probably can't dig. they certainly can't produce the kind of architectural marvels you're destined to create underground. By the time you waddle home 3 hours later, the burrow entrance having relocated itself to exactly where it was before, the sneaky thing you've developed the first hints of the philosophical framework that will sustain you through decades of gloriously boring existence. Some creatures soar, others waddle with purpose. You're definitely in the waddle category, and that's perfectly fine. Your mother's hints about independence start subtle. Like a diplomat trying to end an awkward conversation, she begins spending longer periods outside the burrow, leaving you to contemplate the existential weight of your own company. Her milk production shifts from all-you-can-drink buffet to limited-time offer to, sorry, we're closed. The message becomes clearer when she starts bringing home grass samples instead of providing the usual room service. She drops them near you with the air of someone leaving homework assignments, then settles in to watch you figure out what exactly you're supposed to do with these green things that aren't milk. Your first solo foraging attempts are exercises in optimistic failure. You approach a promising patch of grass with all the confidence of someone who's never actually done this before, which is accurate. The grass, it turns out, has opinions about being eaten. Some of it fights back by being tougher than your inexperienced jaw muscles can handle. Other varieties taste like they've been seasoned with disappointment and regret. But the real crisis comes when you return to what you've mentally designated as your patch of grass, a particularly tender collection of shoots you discovered near the burrow entrance, only to find another wombat there, systematically destroying your carefully curated dining experience. This is your first introduction to the harsh reality of property rights in the wombat world. There aren't any. The interloper, a slightly older juvenile with the smug confidence that comes from having figured out grass consumption 2 weeks before you did, doesn't even acknowledge your presence. They just sit there, methodically working through your private reserve like they own the place. You consider various responses. Confrontation seems unwise. They're bigger, more experienced, and clearly willing to steal grass from babies. Waiting them out could work, but they seem prepared to spend the entire afternoon there, so you do what any reasonable wombat would do. You find a different patch of grass and pretend you plan to eat there all along. This incident teaches you the first law of wombat survival. Attachment to specific food sources leads only to disappointment and occasionally having to find backup food sources. Learning to dig your own burrow proves harder than watching your mother make it look effortless. Your first attempt resembles less of a proper burrow and more of what humans might generously call a decorative depression. You approach the project with enthusiasm, which lasts approximately 4 minutes, until you realize that dirt is heavy and your paws aren't particularly designed for construction work. The engineering challenges are significant. Angle of descent, too steep, and you slide back down your own tunnel. Too shallow, and you're basically just creating a wombat-shaped groove in the landscape. Support structures, apparently important, though you discover this through several minor cave-ins that leave you temporarily buried in your own ambitious excavation. Your first successful burrow, and successful here means you can fit inside it without the roof collapsing immediately. Measures roughly 1 wombat length in depth, and has all the architectural integrity of a sandcastle at high tide. But it's yours. You spend the first night in your new home listening to every sound the bush makes, convinced that each rustle and crack signals the approach of something interested in eating young wombats who've moved out too early. The burrow feels enormous and exposed, nothing like the secure family tunnel system you've abandoned for this adventure in independent living. By morning, you've developed a healthy respect for the engineering challenges your mother made look effortless. You've also gained a new appreciation for just how much work goes into maintaining a proper home when you can't rely on someone else to handle the upkeep. But there's something deeply satisfying about eating grass you found yourself and sleeping in a hole you dug yourself. Even if both the grass and the hole leave considerable room for improvement, independence, it turns out, tastes like dirt and effort. But it's your dirt and your effort which makes all the difference. Your first dingo encounter happens on what starts as an ordinary Tuesday morning, which immediately stops being ordinary the moment you catch a whiff of something that definitely isn't grass, dirt, or other wombats. It's musky and sharp and carries the distinct scent of things that eat other things. You freeze mid-chew, a strand of grass hanging from your mouth like the world's least impressive pasta dish. Your brain, which normally operates at the speed of continental drift, suddenly shifts into what passes for high gear in wombat processing terms. The dingo appears from behind a eucalyptus tree with the casual confidence of someone who knows exactly where they stand in the food chain. It's taller than you, faster than you, and equipped with teeth that seem designed for purposes more sinister than grass consumption. Its yellow eyes scan the area with professional interest, like a real estate agent evaluating property values. This is the moment when instinct takes over, and you discover that your instincts have a surprisingly dark sense of humor. Instead of running, which would be pointless, since dingoes can probably outrun you while carrying groceries, your body decides the optimal survival strategy is to become as boring as possible. You drop to the ground and proceed to impersonate the world's most unconvincing rock. The technique involves lying completely still while attempting to think rocky thoughts. You close your eyes on the theory that if you can't see the dingo, perhaps the dingo can't see you. This logic has roughly the same scientific validity as believing that rain dances control weather. But desperation isn't known for its critical thinking skills. Minutes pass. Or maybe hours. Time becomes meaningless when you're pretending to be a geological formation. The dingo approaches, sniffs around your general vicinity, and apparently decides you're either actually a rock or too boring to bother with. It wanders off to find something more entertaining to terrorize, leaving you to contemplate the philosophical implications of surviving through strategic dullness. Your fox encounter 3 weeks later follows a different script entirely. Foxes, it turns out, are less easily fooled by the rock impersonation and more inclined to investigate interesting smells by poking them with sharp things. This fox appears during your evening constitutional, a leisurely waddle to check whether any new grass has grown since your afternoon waddle. It's smaller than the dingo but moves with the quick, nervous energy of someone who's had too much caffeine and not enough sleep. When it spots you, its ears perk up with the kind of interest that suggests you've just become today's entertainment. Running seems like the obvious choice, so you attempt what you optimistically call the Wombat waddle run technique. This involves moving all 4 legs as quickly as possible while maintaining the aerodynamic profile of a furry refrigerator. Your top speed clocks in at roughly the pace of enthusiastic walking, which would be impressive for a piece of furniture but is less useful for escaping predators. The fox keeps pace easily, apparently enjoying this low-speed chase scene. It's like being pursued by someone riding a bicycle while you're on foot, if foot travel involved considerable wobbling and periodic stops to catch your breath. Fortunately, foxes have short attention spans. After 30 seconds of this comedy routine, your pursuer gets distracted by something more interesting, probably a butterfly, because butterflies are always stealing attention from hard-working ground dwellers, trying not to get eaten. These encounters teach you the fundamental principles of wombat defense strategy. Option 1. Become so boring that predators lose interest. Option 2. Run in the technical sense, while hoping something more interesting appears before your cardiovascular system gives out. But you also discover option 3 during a later encounter with a particularly persistent fox. Your posterior doubles as armor plating. This revelation comes when the fox decides to test whether you're actually edible by taking an experimental nibble of your hindquarters. Instead of tender wombat meat, it encounters what can only be described as furry granite. Your rear end, it turns out, consists primarily of cartilage, bone, and what feels like natural body armor. The fox's expression shifts from predatory interest to confusion to what might be dental pain. It backs away, probably questioning its career choices and wondering if there's an easier way to make a living in the Australian bush. You waddle away with new confidence in your defensive capabilities. Sure, you can't outrun anything or outfight anything, but you can apparently outbore anything and, failing that, present them with a chewing experience roughly equivalent to trying to eat a leather sofa. It's not glamorous, but it works. Meeting other young wombats proves to be an exercise in awkward territorial negotiations disguised as social interaction. Your first peer encounter happens at what you've mentally designated as the good napping spot, a sun-warmed patch of ground near some conveniently positioned rocks that provide both back support and wind protection. You arrive to find another juvenile wombat already there, sprawled out with the relaxed confidence of someone who clearly doesn't understand property law. This wombat is roughly your size but carries themselves with an air of superiority that suggests they've been successfully napping in public for at least a week longer than you have. The standoff that follows could best be described as aggressively passive. Neither of you moves, neither of you acknowledges the other's existence. You both just sit there, radiating the kind of polite hostility usually reserved for people arguing over airplane armrests. After 20 minutes of this diplomatic crisis, you discover the wombat solution. There are other napping spots. This revelation comes as a shock, since you'd convinced yourself that this particular patch of dirt was uniquely suited to your specific napping requirements. But territorial disputes over grazing areas prove more serious. Unlike napping spots, which are abundant, truly premium grass is limited. The tender shoots near water sources, the sweet grass that grows in morning shade, the perfectly aged vegetation that's had time to develop proper flavor. These resources are worth fighting for. Your first real territorial dispute involves a patch of grass so mediocre that humans would probably use it to fill potholes. But it's your mediocre grass. And when another young wombat begins systematically working through it, the situation demands action. The fight, if you can call it that, resembles less of a battle and more of a slow-motion argument conducted entirely through body language. You approach the intruder and position yourself between them and the disputed grass. They respond by continuing to eat while pointedly ignoring your presence. You escalate by standing closer. They escalate by chewing more aggressively. The conflict reaches its climax when you both end up eating grass from the same patch, while studiously pretending the other doesn't exist. It's like sharing an elevator with someone you're actively feuding with, technically civil, but charged with mutual resentment. Wombat communication, you learn, consists primarily of grunts that convey surprisingly specific information. A short grunt means, "I see you but choose not to care." A longer grunt translates to, "This is my territory and you are not welcome." The aggressive snort serves as punctuation for, "I am prepared to defend my position through additional snorting if necessary." The most complex communication involves threatening to attack while making it clear that actually attacking would be too much work. This is accomplished through a series of postures, grunts, and meaningful looks that somehow convey both, "I could totally fight you," and, "But I'd rather not because fighting is exhausting." Your first friendship develops not through shared interests or compatible personalities, but through pure laziness. You encounter another young wombat at a watering hole during the heat of the afternoon, both of you too tired to properly establish territorial boundaries. Instead of the usual competitive routine, you both just lie down in whatever shade is available and proceed to nap. This shared experience of being too tired to be antisocial creates a bond based entirely on mutual recognition that sometimes being social requires less energy than being properly territorial. Your friendship consists mainly of occasionally napping in the same general area while maintaining enough distance to preserve dignity. It's not the deep emotional connection that humans might expect from friendship, but it works for two creatures whose social needs extend roughly as far as not completely alone but not too crowded either. The relationship lasts 3 weeks, ending when your friend discovers better napping territory and migrates there without notice. You're briefly offended before realizing you'd have done exactly the same thing, which restores your faith in the reliability of wombat nature. Winter arrives with the subtle menace of a landlord raising rent. You don't see it coming until suddenly your comfortable lifestyle becomes significantly more expensive in terms of effort required. The first sign isn't the temperature, which drops so gradually that you barely notice. It's the grass. Your reliable green friends begin disappearing with the methodical efficiency of someone cleaning up after a party. What was once abundant becomes scarce. What was once tender becomes tough. What was once easily accessible becomes buried under layers of what humans call frost, but you experience as nature's way of making breakfast more difficult. This is when you discover that you possess hoarding instincts you didn't know existed. Suddenly, the idea of eating grass when you find it seems wasteful. What if you need that grass later? What if winter grass is the last grass? What if you're about to experience the longest period between meals in wombat history? Your hoarding strategy lacks sophistication. You begin bringing extra grass back to your burrow, creating what could generously be called a food cache, or accurately described as a pile of vegetation slowly rotting in the corner. The engineering challenges are immediate. Grass takes up space, and your burrow was designed for one wombat plus the occasional visitor, not one wombat plus a winter's worth of backup meals. The Great Burrow Insulation Project becomes your first major home improvement undertaking. You approach it with the enthusiasm of someone who's just realized their house has no heating system, and winter is apparently not going away on its own. Insulation, it turns out, involves stuffing every available gap with grass, leaves, and anything else that might slow down the movement of cold air. Your technique resembles less of professional weatherproofing and more of aggressive hoarding with architectural benefits. The process teaches you that there's a fine line between well-insulated and buried alive in organic matter. You cross this line several times, requiring emergency excavation to restore basic mobility within your own home. But the real revelation is sleep. Winter, you discover, is when your natural talent for extended napping transforms from lifestyle choice to survival strategy. 16 hours a day isn't just possible, it's necessary. When food becomes scarce and weather becomes hostile, the logical response is to simply opt out of being awake for most of it. Your sleep schedule shifts to accommodate this new reality. You wake up, check if winter is over, determine that it's not, eat whatever grass you can find, and return to bed. This routine continues for what feels like forever, but probably amounts to a few months of Australian winter, which by global standards barely qualifies as mildly inconvenient weather. During your extended periods of semi-hibernation, you develop a philosophical framework around seasonal survival. Winter isn't something to endure, it's something to sleep through. The creatures that stay active during cold months are either poorly designed or showing off. You've discovered the ultimate efficient approach. Reduce your operating expenses to nearly zero and wait for better market conditions. Spring, when it finally arrives, feels like waking up from the world's longest nap to discover that someone has restocked the entire world with fresh grass. The awkward teenage phase hits you, like puberty hitting a perfectly reasonable adult conversation suddenly, and with no regard for timing or dignity. Your body begins changing in ways that seem designed by someone with a questionable sense of humor about mammalian development. Your appetite shifts from interested in food to constantly planning the next meal while eating the current meal. The grass consumption that once satisfied you for hours now barely registers as a snack. You find yourself grazing with the desperate intensity of someone trying to fuel a growth spurt that's apparently decided to happen all at once. Coordination becomes a fond memory. Your legs grow faster than your brain can adapt to their new length, resulting in a walking style that resembles someone trying to operate stilts they've never used before. Simple activities like walking in a straight line or stopping when intended become surprisingly complex challenges. Your teeth present their own set of problems. Wombat teeth grow continuously throughout life, which sounds convenient until you experience the teething process as a semi-adult. Your molars decide to grow faster than you can wear them down through normal grass consumption, creating dental issues that manifest as difficulty chewing and an increased tendency to accidentally bite your own tongue. The molting process proves particularly embarrassing. Your childhood coat, which served you perfectly well through your first year, begins shedding with the enthusiasm of someone cleaning out a closet. The replacement fur grows in patches, creating a patchy, uneven appearance that makes you look like a stuffed animal that's seen better decades. Growth spurts affect not just your body but your living situation. The burrow that felt spacious during your compact juvenile phase suddenly seems designed for someone considerably smaller. Your head bumps the ceiling during routine maintenance. Your shoulders scrape the walls during normal movement. The entrance passage that once provided easy access now requires strategic maneuvering to navigate without getting stuck. Home renovation becomes necessary, extending your burrow to accommodate your new dimensions while trying not to destabilize the structural integrity of your underground architecture. Scouting new territory becomes the most exciting 20 minutes of your month, which tells you everything you need to know about the thrilling pace of wombat life. The expedition begins at dawn, not because dawn is particularly significant, but because that's when you wake up from your 14-hour sleep cycle and realize you've eaten all the good grass within convenient waddling distance of home. The process requires the kind of strategic planning usually reserved for military operations or grocery shopping during sales. You begin by mapping your current territory in your head, which resembles less of actual cartography and more of mental notes about where the decent grass grows and which rocks provide optimal back-scratching opportunities. Expansion means venturing beyond the comfortable boundaries of known mediocrity into the uncertain realm of potentially better mediocrity. It's like house hunting, if house hunting involved the constant possibility of being eaten and required you to construct your own house using nothing but personal excavation skills. The complex mathematics of optimal burrow placement would impress engineers if engineers specialized in underground architecture for creatures whose primary design requirement is functional enough to support extended napping. You must consider drainage. Nobody wants to wake up in an underground swimming pool. Soil composition matters too. Clay is waterproof but difficult to dig, while sandy soil excavates easily but tends to collapse without warning. Distance from food sources requires careful calculation. Too close, and you'll overgraze your own front yard. Too far, and your daily commute to breakfast becomes an exhausting expedition that defeats the purpose of having convenient access to nutrition. Proximity to neighbors presents its own challenges. Other wombats mean competition for resources, but they also mean the local predator population is distributed across multiple targets instead of focused exclusively on you. It's like choosing between living in a crowded neighborhood with shared security risks or becoming the only interesting thing for miles around. Your first border dispute develops with the passive-aggressive artistry that wombats have elevated to an art form. Your new neighbor, a slightly older wombat with what you interpret as judgmental body language, apparently disagrees with your interpretation of where your territory ends and theirs begins. The conflict unfolds over several weeks through increasingly pointed territorial demonstrations. They begin grazing closer to your burrow entrance. You respond by extending your own grazing sessions further into what you consider neutral territory. They escalate by leaving scent markers in strategically provocative locations. You counter by establishing your own scent boundaries with the precision of someone drawing property lines with permanent marker. The entire dispute resembles a diplomatic crisis, conducted entirely through meaningful positioning and strategic timing of bathroom breaks. No direct confrontation occurs that would require too much energy and might lead to actual consequences. Instead, you engage in the kind of Cold War that can only be waged by creatures whose primary weapons are stubbornness and the ability to hold grudges for months. Marking your territory through strategic defecation becomes both an art and a science. The placement must be assertive but not aggressive, clear but not inflammatory. Too close to a neighbor's burrow, and you're starting a fight. Too far from your own territory, and you're basically littering without purpose. The timing matters as much as the placement. Early morning deposits establish your presence for the day. Evening markers serve as overnight security systems, warning nocturnal visitors that this area is under wombat management. The frequency creates a maintenance schedule that balances territorial assertion with the practical limitations of your digestive system. Your first major excavation project transforms from necessity into something approaching therapy. What begins as a simple burrow extension, adding a secondary tunnel for food storage, evolves into an underground complex that would impress anyone familiar with the civil engineering challenges of subsurface construction. The digging process develops its own meditative rhythm. Scrape, scoop, back up, dump the soil, repeat. Hours pass without conscious awareness of time, your mind focused entirely on the immediate physical challenge of moving dirt from inside the tunnel to outside the tunnel. It's like yoga, if yoga involved more dirt under your claws and the constant possibility of cave-ins. The project teaches you that construction work suits your temperament perfectly. It's solitary, practical, and produces measurable results at a pace that matches your natural approach to life. Each day's progress can be evaluated by looking at the growing pile of excavated soil outside your burrow entrance. The therapeutic benefits extend beyond the physical activity. Underground, you're insulated from the chaos of surface life, weather, predators, other wombats, with their complicated territorial negotiations. It's just you, the earth, and the simple satisfaction of creating something functional through sustained effort. When you finally complete the project 3 weeks later, you possess not just expanded living space, but a deep appreciation for the meditative qualities of repetitive physical labor. The new tunnel system includes proper drainage, strategic ventilation, and enough storage space to hoard grass through several consecutive pessimistic weather predictions. Standing outside your burrow entrance, surveying the pile of dirt that represents weeks of dedicated excavation, you experience something that might generously be called pride, or accurately described as satisfaction with a job completed adequately. Developing a refined palate for different grass species happens gradually, like acquiring a taste for expensive wine, except the wine is free and grows everywhere but still requires considerable expertise to fully appreciate. Your juvenile approach to grass consumption, green thing, eat it, evolves into something approaching genuine culinary sophistication. You learn to distinguish between the sweet tenderness of new growth and the fibrous toughness of mature blades. Spring grass carries hints of optimism and fresh rain. Summer grass develops complex flavors from extended sun exposure, while autumn grass offers the mellowed sweetness of vegetation preparing for dormancy. Winter grass, when you can find it, tastes like survival and desperation, but beggars can't be choosers. The zen of grazing develops naturally from hours of methodical consumption. Each bite requires consideration, angle of approach, optimal jaw positioning, efficient chewing technique. Your mind settles into the rhythm of bite, chew, assess, swallow, repeat. It's meditation through mastication, achieving inner peace one blade of grass at a time. The process becomes so automatic that you sometimes achieve what humans might call a flow state, where consciousness merges with activity until you're not thinking about eating grass so much as becoming one with the act of grass consumption. Time becomes meaningless. Location becomes irrelevant. There's only the endless cycle of finding, evaluating, and consuming vegetation. Seasonal menu planning emerges from practical necessity rather than gourmet ambition. Winter demands roots hardy, reliable, underground storage systems that plants have thoughtfully provided for exactly this situation. The digging required adds physical activity to your meal preparation, which counts as exercise in the Wombat fitness regimen. Summer brings abundant leaf options, young shoots, tender stems, the occasional flower that tastes like nature's way of apologizing for making you work so hard the rest of the year. The variety requires decision-making skills you didn't know you possessed. Do you eat the guaranteed adequate grass nearby, or venture further for the potentially superior vegetation you spotted yesterday? Learning to identify poisonous plants through minor poisoning provides education you'd prefer to have acquired through less personal research methods. The first incident involves a seemingly innocent green thing that looks exactly like every other green thing, but apparently contains natural chemicals designed to make you regret your dietary choices. The symptoms begin with mild stomach discomfort and progress through various stages of digestive disapproval. Your body's response teaches you that not all vegetation is created equal, and some plants are nature's way of testing whether you're paying attention to what you put in your mouth. Recovery takes 2 days of feeling sorry for yourself and avoiding anything green that you can't positively identify as non-hostile. The experience creates a mental catalogue of plants that fight back, which you consult carefully during future foraging expeditions. The discovery of bark happens during a particularly lean winter, when your usual food sources have been reduced to whatever hasn't been buried under frost. Desperation leads you to experiment with tree bark, approaching it with the same optimism as someone trying a new restaurant based on positive reviews from unreliable sources. Bark, it turns out, is like comfort food for wombats. It's available year-round, doesn't require hunting or complex preparation, and provides the kind of satisfying chewing experience that keeps your ever-growing teeth properly maintained. Different trees offer different flavors. Eucalyptus bark carries hints of the medicinal oils that make koalas drowsy, while other species provide subtle variations in texture and taste. The bark discovery transforms your relationship with trees, from large obstacles that block sunlight from grass, to reliable backup food sources with architectural benefits. You develop preferences for specific bark types, seasonal harvesting strategies, and techniques for sustainable collection that won't damage your newfound food sources. Your foraging expertise reaches the point where you can identify optimal grazing conditions by scent alone, predict grass quality based on soil moisture, and plan meals around weather patterns, like a meteorologist with a specialized interest in vegetation management. Perfecting the art of camouflage through stillness becomes your signature move, like a magic trick that only works if your audience has extremely low expectations for entertainment. The technique builds on your natural tendency toward extended periods of motionlessness, refined through practical application during various encounters with things that might want to eat you. The key insight is that most predators are looking for movement, not wombats specifically. By remaining completely still, you transform from potential meal to probably a rock in the visual processing centers of creatures scanning for dinner options. Your natural coloring helps. Brown and gray aren't exciting colors, but they blend beautifully with dirt, dead grass, and shadows. Advanced camouflage requires mental discipline. The urge to check whether the coast is clear fights against the survival instinct to remain motionless until absolutely certain the danger has passed. You learn to measure time not in minutes, but in heartbeats, waiting until your pulse returns to normal before risking even the slightest movement. The technique proves especially effective during daylight hours, when most predators rely on vision for hunting. You become proficient at finding positions that maximize your resemblance to natural landscape features, nestled against rocks, positioned near logs, or simply lying flat in open areas where your stillness makes you invisible through sheer boring reliability. Weather prediction through joint pain develops accidentally but proves surprisingly accurate. Your body, it turns out, functions as a biological barometer, with various aches and stiffness patterns corresponding to specific atmospheric pressure changes. A dull ache in your left shoulder means rain within 6 hours. Stiffness in your hind legs indicates temperature drops. Sharp twinges in your digging claws signal approaching storms. This forecasting ability transforms from minor discomfort into valuable survival intelligence. Knowing when weather will change allows you to adjust foraging schedules, plan burrow maintenance, and position yourself for optimal comfort during atmospheric disturbances. You become the neighborhood meteorologist, though your predictions reach an audience of exactly one. The strategic use of mud baths emerges from discovering that certain types of mud provide relief from various discomforts. Clay-rich mud helps with skin irritation from plant scratches and insect bites. Sandy mud works well for removing excess oil from your coat. The mineral-rich mud near certain water sources seems to have general health benefits you can't explain but definitely experience. Mud bath timing becomes an art form. Too frequent, and you spend most of your time either muddy or cleaning off mud. Too infrequent, and you miss the therapeutic benefits that keep your coat healthy and your skin comfortable. You develop a maintenance schedule based on seasonal conditions, activity levels, and whether you've encountered any particularly scratchy vegetation recently. The process also serves social purposes. Mud from different locations carries distinct scents that communicate information about your recent travels to other wombats. It's like wearing cologne, if cologne provided practical benefits and came free from local natural sources. Developing night vision for optimal nocturnal boring requires adjusting your sleep schedule to take advantage of darkness for various activities that benefit from reduced visibility to potential observers. Your eyes adapt to function more efficiently in low-light conditions, allowing you to forage, travel, and conduct territorial maintenance during hours when most threats are either sleeping or hunting things that aren't you. Night foraging offers advantages beyond safety. Dew on grass provides additional moisture content that improves both flavor and nutritional value. Many plants are more tender at night when temperatures drop. The reduced competition from other herbivores means better selection and less pressure to eat quickly. Nocturnal territorial maintenance allows you to update scent markers, check boundary conditions, and assess neighbor activities without the daylight drama of direct confrontations. It's like being a suburban security guard with a very small patrol area and very low crime rates. Learning to sleep standing up represents the ultimate evolution of your napping skills. This technique allows you to rest while maintaining the ability to respond quickly to threats or opportunities. It's more challenging than horizontal sleeping, but provides tactical advantages in situations where lying down might leave you vulnerable or where immediate mobility could be important. The skill develops gradually through practice sessions that begin with brief standing rests and progress to extended periods of vertical unconsciousness. Your legs learn to lock in position while your brain shuts down non-essential functions. Balance becomes automatic, maintained through subtle weight shifts that don't require conscious attention. Mastering standing sleep opens new possibilities for rest in locations that weren't previously suitable for napping narrow spaces, areas with questionable ground conditions, or territories where quick escape routes matter more than comfort. It's like having a superpower that's incredibly boring but surprisingly practical. Puberty arrives like an awkward houseguest who overstays their welcome and rearranges your furniture without permission. Your previously reliable antisocial instincts begin experiencing mysterious malfunctions, developing occasional and deeply inconvenient interest in the activities of other wombats. This is profoundly disturbing, since other wombats have always been something to tolerate rather than seek out. The hormonal changes manifest in subtle ways initially. You find yourself lingering slightly longer during territorial encounters, instead of immediately returning to your private business. Scent markers left by other wombats begin carrying information that seems somehow more significant than simple boundary negotiations. Your daily routine starts including brief detours, past areas where other wombats might possibly be conducting their own daily routines. These new impulses fight against years of conditioning that other wombats are competitors for resources, creators of unnecessary drama, and generally exhausting to deal with. The internal conflict produces a state that humans might recognize as teenage confusion, but feels like a fundamental malfunction in your operating system. Understanding the complex ritual of wombat courtship requires decoding social behaviors that make diplomatic summits look straightforward. The process begins with elaborate territorial displays designed to demonstrate your worthiness as a potential partner through the impressive sophistication of your underground architecture and the strategic excellence of your grazing area management. Courtship involves a careful balance between showing interest and maintaining the dignity that comes from not appearing desperate. Too much attention suggests you lack other options. Too little attention gets interpreted as disinterest or, worse, implies you're satisfied with your current solitary lifestyle and don't recognize the obvious benefits of partnership. Your first crush develops with all the romantic sophistication of someone falling in love with a house, based entirely on the quality of its plumbing. The object of your affection possesses what can only be described as exceptional burrow architecture, multiple tunnels, superior drainage, and storage areas that suggest both planning ability and long-term thinking. The practical advantages of this attraction aren't lost on you. Partnership with someone who's already solved the complex engineering challenges of underground living could eliminate years of trial and error construction projects. It's like marrying into a family business, except the business is subsistence, survival, and the benefits include shared maintenance responsibilities for infrastructure projects. But attraction based on real estate appreciation creates its own complications. You find yourself conducting surveillance missions disguised as casual territorial patrols, attempting to evaluate the full scope of their burrow system without appearing overly interested in their property values. This requires the delicate balance of seeming nonchalant while gathering intelligence about tunnel depth, storage capacity, and seasonal flooding resistance. The awkward dance of territorial romance involves maintaining separate living spaces while negotiating shared access to optimal resources. You begin leaving strategically placed scent markers that communicate interest without suggesting immediate intentions to relocate. They respond with their own territorial adjustments that might indicate reciprocal interest or might simply represent normal boundary maintenance. The ambiguity is maddening. Learning that sharing space is harder than sharing food becomes apparent during your first attempts at coordinated grazing. Food sharing involves clear protocols. You eat this patch, they eat that patch. Nobody's territorial instincts get triggered. Space sharing requires constant negotiation about acceptable proximity levels, appropriate interaction frequencies, and whether simultaneous napping constitutes intimacy or convenience. The complexity increases when you realize that your carefully calibrated antisocial comfort zone conflicts with the basic requirements of partnership. Spending time together requires being together, which interferes with your established routines of solitary contemplation, private territorial maintenance, and extended periods of thinking about nothing in particular. Courtship gifts follow the practical aesthetic that governs all wombat social interactions. Your romantic gestures consist of the finest grass clippings you can locate, not the grass you'd eat yourself, but premium vegetation selected specifically for its gift-worthy qualities. This requires developing evaluation criteria for grass that goes beyond personal consumption preferences to consider what might impress someone whose opinion you've inexplicably begun to value. The gift presentation protocol involves strategic placement near their burrow entrance during their absence, allowing them to discover your offering without the pressure of immediate response. This maintains plausible deniability while clearly communicating your intentions. It's like leaving flowers on someone's doorstep, except the flowers are edible and the gesture demonstrates your foraging competence rather than your access to retail florists. The brief, unglamorous mating season arrives with all the romantic ambiance of a business transaction conducted under time pressure. The hormonal urgency that builds over weeks culminates in encounters that prioritize efficiency over sentiment. Nature's approach to romance emphasizes practical results rather than emotional satisfaction. Get the job done, ensure species continuation, return to normal operations. The actual mating process resembles less of a passionate encounter and more of a cooperative project undertaken by two individuals who've agreed to collaborate on a specific biological function. It's brief, straightforward, and followed immediately by the mutual recognition that you've completed the requirements and can now return to your respective territories without further obligation. Post-romance clarity arrives like waking up from a fever dream, wondering why you spent 3 months obsessing over someone else's burrow architecture. The hormonal fog lifts, revealing that your temporary interest in companionship has been replaced by the familiar comfort of solitude and the relief of not having to coordinate your schedule with someone else's needs. You return to your private territory with renewed appreciation for the simple pleasures of eating when you want, sleeping when you choose, and conducting territorial maintenance without consultation or compromise. The brief experiment in partnership confirms that while reproduction serves important biological functions, your natural temperament remains fundamentally suited to independent living. The entire experience leaves you with respect for the complexity of social cooperation and profound gratitude that it's only required periodically rather than as a lifestyle choice. Reaching your maximum waddle speed represents the athletic pinnacle of your existence, the moment when all systems align to produce the kind of performance that would be impressive if speed were measured in determination rather than actual velocity. Your top-end waddle clocks in at roughly the pace of determined human walking, which makes you a speed demon in the wombat world, while remaining completely unthreatening to any creature capable of actual running. The achievement results from years of gradual optimization. Your gait evolves from the chaotic stumbling of youth through the awkward coordination of adolescence to the smooth, efficient locomotion of physical maturity. Each leg learns to work in harmony with the others, producing a rhythm that maximizes forward progress while minimizing energy expenditure. Advanced waddling technique involves subtle adjustments that improve both speed and endurance. Optimal weight distribution keeps your center of gravity low and stable, Coordinated leg movement eliminates the side-to-side wobbling that plagued your earlier attempts at rapid movement. Breathing synchronization ensures adequate oxygen supply during extended periods of what passes for cardiovascular exertion in your demographic. Developing impressive digging muscles happens through the kind of consistent training program that fitness enthusiasts would recognize if fitness enthusiasts spent their time excavating underground tunnels with their bare hands. Your shoulders broaden to support the repetitive scooping motions required for serious earth moving. Your forearms develop the kind of definition that comes from shifting tons of soil one handful at a time. The muscle development serves practical rather than aesthetic purposes. Stronger digging capabilities mean faster tunnel construction, more efficient burrow maintenance, and the ability to undertake major excavation projects without the extended recovery periods that once followed ambitious construction efforts. Your claws adapt to function as specialized tools, developing the hardness and sharpness necessary for efficient soil penetration while maintaining the sensitivity required for precise control during detailed work. It's like having built-in construction equipment that requires no external power source and improves with use. The perfect pooping stance emerges from years of refinement and represents the convergence of comfort, efficiency, and territorial marking strategy. The optimal position balances stability with the precise angle required for maximum deposit accuracy. Your posture communicates confidence while maintaining the dignity appropriate for such an important biological and social function. Stance development involves consideration of wind direction, ground slope, and strategic placement requirements. The final technique incorporates elements of engineering, physics, and territorial psychology into a single smooth motion that accomplishes multiple objectives simultaneously. Your daily exercise routine consists primarily of walking to food, which sounds modest but accumulates significant activity over time. Multiple foraging expeditions per day, combined with territorial patrols and burrow maintenance activities, provide steady, low-intensity exercise that maintains cardiovascular health without the stress of high-impact athletics. The routine's sustainability comes from its integration with necessary life activities. You're not exercising for the sake of fitness, you're conducting essential survival operations that happen to provide physical conditioning as a beneficial side effect. Achieving optimal roundness for maximum efficiency represents the culmination of your physical development. Your body composition reaches the perfect balance between muscle mass for functional capability and body fat for insulation and energy storage. The result is a shape that maximizes survival advantages while maintaining the aerodynamic profile of a furry boulder ideal for your lifestyle requirements. Understanding weather patterns through fur static develops into your most reliable forecasting system, more accurate than whatever meteorological methods humans use and infinitely more personal. Your coat functions as a biological weather station, responding to atmospheric pressure changes, humidity fluctuations, and electromagnetic activity with a precision that would impress professional meteorologists if they understood how to interpret mammalian fur behavior. The static patterns vary by weather type. Approaching storms create a distinctive crackling sensation that starts at your ears and spreads across your back. High-pressure systems produce a smooth, settled feeling in your coat that corresponds perfectly with clear weather conditions. Humidity changes register as subtle shifts in how your fur moves in response to air currents. This forecasting ability allows you to plan activities around weather conditions with remarkable accuracy. You schedule major foraging expeditions during optimal weather windows, time burrow maintenance to avoid precipitation, and position yourself for maximum comfort during atmospheric disturbances. It's like having a personal weather service that never requires batteries or subscription fees. Developing intuition about danger proves less reliable than weather prediction, mostly because your anxiety levels treat everything from falling leaves to distant airplane sounds as potential threats requiring immediate attention. Your danger detection system operates on the principle that false alarms are preferable to missed warnings, resulting in a response rate that would make smoke detectors seem laid back. The intuition manifests as a general sense of unease that might indicate approaching predators, changing weather, digestive issues, or absolutely nothing worth worrying about. Distinguishing between legitimate threats and phantom concerns becomes an ongoing challenge that you never quite master, leading to a lifestyle of constant low-level vigilance, punctuated by periods of completely unnecessary panic. The art of selective memory allows you to forget everything inconvenient while maintaining perfect recall for information that supports your preferred version of reality. You remember exactly which patches of grass provide optimal nutrition, but somehow forget the locations of plants that cause digestive distress. Territorial disputes that ended badly disappear from your mental records, while successful boundary negotiations become foundational memories that reinforce your confidence in diplomatic wombat relations. This selective editing of experience creates a personal history that emphasizes your competence while minimizing evidence of your various failures and embarrassing moments. It's like having a personal publicist inside your own brain, managing your self-image through strategic information retention. Learning which humans to ignore versus avoid requires developing sophisticated risk assessment capabilities. Some humans show no interest in wildlife and can be safely ignored as irrelevant to your daily operations. Others display the kind of curiosity that leads to unwanted attention and should be avoided through preventive measures like strategic timing of surface activities. The most dangerous humans are those who actively seek wildlife encounters for photography, observation, or interaction purposes. These individuals require evasive action and careful monitoring to ensure your continued ability to conduct boring activities without interference from enthusiastic nature lovers. Philosophical acceptance of your place in the food chain brings the peace that comes from understanding your role in the larger ecosystem. You're not the apex predator, but you're also not the most vulnerable prey species. You occupy a comfortable middle position where most things ignore you, and the few things that don't can usually be discouraged through strategic boring behavior or emergency armor deployment. This acceptance eliminates the stress of trying to be something you're not, while providing appreciation for the advantages of being exactly what you are. Achieving optimal burrow network status transforms your underground domain from a simple hole in the ground into what real estate professionals would call a well-appointed subterranean complex, with multiple access points and excellent drainage. Your masterpiece resembles an underground suburb designed by someone who prioritizes functionality over aesthetics and values privacy above all other considerations. The main tunnel system extends roughly 20 feet in 3 directions, creating a layout that provides escape routes, storage areas, and seasonal accommodation options. Each tunnel serves specific purposes developed through years of trial-and-error engineering. The east tunnel catches morning warmth and functions as your primary sleeping quarters. The west tunnel stays cooler and works perfectly for afternoon naps during hot weather. The north tunnel, sloped for optimal drainage, serves as your emergency shelter during flooding and your winter food storage facility. Construction took place over several years, with each addition carefully planned to integrate with existing infrastructure without compromising structural integrity. You learn to think like an architect, considering load-bearing requirements, ventilation needs, and the complex mathematics of soil displacement. The project required moving approximately 3 tons of dirt, 1 portal at a time, creating the kind of impressive earthwork that would earn recognition if anyone kept records of underground construction achievements by mammals. Advanced lawn maintenance through strategic grazing develops into a science that combines botany, agriculture, and long-term resource planning. Your territory's grass management system operates on principles that would impress professional landscapers. If professional landscapers specialized in maintaining vegetation through systematic consumption rather than mechanical trimming, the strategy involves rotating grazing areas to prevent overuse while encouraging healthy regrowth. You divide your territory into zones, moving systematically through each section while allowing previously grazed areas to recover. This prevents the soil erosion and vegetation degradation that results from concentrating all your eating activities in convenient locations. Seasonal adjustments account for different growth rates and weather conditions. Spring's rapid growth allows for more intensive grazing, while summer's slower regeneration requires careful rationing of your best grass resources. Winter forces you to utilize areas you normally reserve for emergencies, making spring recovery planning essential for maintaining long-term vegetation quality. Dealing with property line disputes evolves into the kind of sophisticated diplomatic maneuvering that would impress international relations specialists if international relations operated through strategic positioning and meaningful pauses, rather than formal negotiations. Your neighbors include 2 other adult wombats, each managing their own territories with the same careful attention to boundary maintenance that you've developed. The Cold War aspects emerge from the need to assert territorial rights without escalating to actual conflict, which would be exhausting and potentially dangerous for everyone involved. Disputes manifest through increasingly pointed demonstrations of ownership, extended grazing sessions near disputed areas, strategic placement of scent markers, and the occasional pointed stare that communicates, "I see what you're doing and I'm keeping track." Resolution comes through gradual adjustment rather than dramatic confrontation. Boundaries shift incrementally as each party tests the limits of acceptable expansion while monitoring the responses of their neighbors. It's like negotiating property lines through body language and patience, with agreements reached through mutual recognition of sustainable territorial arrangements. Your daily patrol routine develops into a meditation practice disguised as security work. The morning inspection tour covers the entire perimeter, checking for overnight changes, unwanted visitors, or maintenance requirements. You follow the same route each day, moving at the steady pace that allows for thorough observation without unnecessary energy expenditure. The routine serves multiple purposes beyond simple security. Regular movement maintains your physical condition, provides opportunity for grass quality assessment, and offers the mental stimulation that comes from systematic observation of familiar territory. Most importantly, it confirms that everything remains reassuringly unchanged, and the ultimate goal of effective territory management. Checking that everything is still boring becomes the primary objective of your security operations. Excitement indicates problems that require attention. Drama suggests territorial violations or resource conflicts that need addressing. The perfect patrol concludes with the confirmation that your domain continues to function exactly as intended, quietly, predictably, and without interference from external complications. Seasonal territory management requires the kind of strategic thinking that balances expansion opportunities against consolidation needs. Spring's abundant resources create conditions favorable for territorial growth, assuming your neighbors haven't had the same idea simultaneously. Summer's resource limitations suggest focusing on maintaining current boundaries rather than ambitious expansion projects. Expansion timing depends on resource availability, neighbor activities, and your own capacity for managing additional territory. Too much expansion strains your ability to maintain adequate security and resource management across the enlarged area. Too little expansion means missing opportunities to improve your overall position during favorable conditions. Consolidation becomes necessary when resources become scarce, or when maintaining extensive boundaries requires more energy than the territory provides in benefits. Winter often forces temporary consolidation, focusing activities on core areas with reliable resources, while allowing peripheral zones to remain nominally yours, but practically unused until better conditions return. The seasonal cycle creates a rhythm of growth and consolidation that matches natural resource availability, with your capacity for territorial management, ensuring long-term sustainability of your small but well-managed kingdom. Achieving master status in grass consumption represents the culmination of years dedicated to perfecting what most creatures consider a basic survival skill, but you've elevated to an art form requiring expertise, judgment, and sophisticated technique. Your grazing methodology incorporates elements of nutrition science, efficiency, engineering, and quality control that would impress agricultural specialists if they understood the complexity involved in professional vegetation consumption. Master-level grazing begins with grass selection based on criteria invisible to amateur herbivores. You assess nutritional content through visual inspection, scent analysis, and tactile evaluation that reveals protein levels, moisture content, and optimal chewing requirements. Young grass provides easy digestion and sweet flavor, but limited staying power. Mature grass offers more substantial nutrition, but requires additional processing effort. The perfect selection balances immediate palatability with long-term energy provision. Your consumption technique maximizes nutrient extraction while minimizing energy expenditure. Optimal bite size ensures efficient chewing without overwhelming your processing capacity. Chewing rhythm maintains steady progress without causing jaw fatigue. Swallowing timing prevents digestive overload while maintaining steady consumption rates that complete meals in reasonable timeframes. Developing expertise in root vegetable acquisition expands your dietary options beyond surface vegetation into the underground economy of stored plant energy. Root foraging requires archaeological skills, excavating buried treasures through systematic digging that locates optimal root systems without destroying the plants that produced them. Different root types demand specialized extraction techniques. Shallow roots yield to gentle scraping and careful loosening. Deep roots require strategic excavation that follows root systems to their source without damaging surrounding vegetation. Bulbous roots need precise digging that separates edible portions from fibrous support structures. Quality assessment becomes critical for root selection, since underground vegetation can't be evaluated through visual inspection alone. Scent provides information about freshness and nutritional content. Texture reveals whether roots have developed the tough, woody characteristics that make them unsuitable for efficient consumption. Size indicates whether the excavation effort will provide adequate nutritional return on energy investment. The fine art of bark stripping develops from necessity during lean seasons into a specialized skill that provides reliable nutrition when other food sources become scarce. Different tree species offer varying bark quality, from the tender inner bark of certain eucalyptus varieties to the tougher but more nutritious outer bark of mature trees. Stripping technique requires precision that removes edible bark without damaging the tree's ability to continue producing future bark crops. Sustainable harvesting ensures long-term food security by maintaining healthy tree populations within your territory. Overharvesting kills trees and eliminates future resources. Underutilization wastes available nutrition during critical periods. Tool use emerges naturally from bark stripping requirements. Your claws develop specialized techniques for scoring bark in strips that separate cleanly from trunk surfaces. Teeth provide the cutting action necessary for processing bark into manageable pieces. The coordination between claws and teeth creates an efficient system for converting standing trees into portable nutrition. Quality control protocols reject substandard vegetation based on criteria developed through years of consumption experience. Spoiled grass exhibits color changes, textural degradation, and scent characteristics that indicate nutritional compromise or potential digestive problems. Damaged vegetation may contain harmful bacteria or fungal infections that could cause illness. Age assessment determines whether vegetation has passed optimal consumption windows. Over-mature grass becomes fibrous and difficult to digest. Underdeveloped vegetation lacks the nutritional density that justifies consumption effort. The optimal window balances maximum nutrition with minimum processing requirements. Efficiency metrics track calories consumed versus energy expended in acquisition and processing activities. Professional-level grazing maintains positive energy balance while providing adequate nutrition for sustained health and activity levels. Poor efficiency ratios indicate the need for technique adjustment or resource selection modification. Consumption rate optimization ensures adequate nutrition intake without excessive time investment in feeding activities. Too slow eating extends meal duration unnecessarily, reducing time available for other essential activities. Too rapid consumption compromises digestion and reduces nutrient absorption efficiency. Your professional grazing expertise transforms basic survival activity into systematic resource management that provides reliable nutrition while maintaining sustainable relationships with food sources throughout your territory. Establishing détente with the local dingo population requires the kind of diplomatic finesse usually reserved for international treaties, except the negotiations occur entirely through strategic positioning and carefully timed demonstrations of mutual disinterest. The agreement you eventually reach with your neighborhood dingo pack operates on principles of non-interference and territorial respect that would make peace negotiators proud if they understood how to conduct diplomacy through meaningful glances and strategic ignoring. The local pack consists of 3 adults, whose territory overlaps yours in ways that require ongoing boundary management. Early encounters followed standard predator-prey protocols. They showed interest. You became a rock. Everyone moved on with their day. But repeated interactions created a gradual recognition that you pose no threat to their operations and offer minimal entertainment value as potential prey. The breakthrough moment comes during your 3rd year, when the pack leader approaches while you're conducting routine territorial maintenance. Instead of the usual freeze and pray response, you continue your activity while monitoring their approach through peripheral vision. The dingo pauses, observes your complete lack of interesting behavior, and apparently decides you're too boring to justify continued attention. This establishes the foundation for your ongoing relationship. Mutual acknowledgement without engagement. They hunt more exciting prey while you continue your generally unexciting existence. Your paths cross regularly, but both parties understand that neither represents significant opportunity or threat to the other's objectives. The Great Fox Standoff of your 3rd year becomes the defining diplomatic crisis of your adult life, testing your conflict resolution skills and patience in ways that prepare you for future international incidents. The crisis begins when a young fox, apparently new to the area and unfamiliar with established territorial arrangements, decides your burrow entrance looks like promising real estate for their own use. Unlike dingoes, who hunt in packs and prefer mobile prey, this fox operates solo and shows persistent interest in your infrastructure. The initial encounters follow familiar patterns. Fox approaches, you disappear underground, fox eventually leaves. But this particular fox demonstrates unusual persistence, returning daily to investigate your burrow system. with the determined curiosity of someone conducting a property inspection. The standoff escalates when the fox begins leaving scent markers near your entrance, apparently claiming territorial rights to your carefully engineered underground complex. This crosses the line from mere harassment into actual real estate theft, requiring a response that communicates your continued ownership without escalating to violence that could end badly for everyone involved. Your strategy involves passive resistance through schedule adjustment and strategic boring behavior. You modify your surface activities to times when the fox is least likely to be active, reducing direct confrontations while maintaining your territorial presence. When encounters do occur, you respond with such determinedly uninteresting behavior that the fox eventually concludes you're too dull to provide entertainment value. The resolution comes when the fox discovers more exciting opportunities elsewhere, abandoning their claim to your territory in favor of areas offering better hunting prospects or social opportunities with other foxes. You reclaim your entrance through the simple expedient of resuming normal operations, which proves anticlimactic but effective. Eagle diplomacy operates on entirely different principles, since aerial predators present threats that can't be addressed through ground-based territorial negotiations. Your strategy focuses on staying low and boring, maintaining such a consistently uninteresting surface profile that eagles seeking dramatic hunting opportunities overlook you in favor of more dynamic prey options. The technique requires timing surface activities to avoid peak hunting hours, while moving with the kind of steady, purposeful gait that suggests destination certainty rather than vulnerable wandering. Eagles prefer prey that offers entertainment value through chase sequences or flight responses. Your consistent failure to provide exciting reactions eventually establishes your reputation as unsuitable for aerial hunting entertainment. Learning to coexist with humans presents the ultimate challenge in interspecies diplomacy, since humans operate according to behavioral patterns that defy logical analysis. Some humans ignore wildlife completely, others show protective interest, and a few demonstrate the kind of intrusive curiosity that makes all other predator relationships seem straightforward by comparison. Your human management strategy emphasizes avoidance through schedule coordination and habitat selection. Humans follow predictable activity patterns that allow you to conduct surface operations during their inactive periods. When encounters prove unavoidable, your response involves maximum boring behavior, combined with strategic positioning that suggests you're heading somewhere else at a pace that doesn't invite intervention. The key insight for human relations is that most humans prefer wildlife that behaves according to their expectations for wildlife behavior. By consistently failing to meet expectations for cuteness, entertainment value, or photo opportunities, you establish yourself as uninteresting to the majority of human observers. Your reputation in the local ecosystem settles into that boring wombat, a designation that provides exactly the kind of anonymity that supports your lifestyle objectives. Predators know you're too dull to hunt for sport and too well defended to hunt for easy meals. Other herbivores recognize you as non-competitive for their preferred resources. Humans generally overlook you as insufficient interesting for attention. This reputation becomes your greatest asset, providing the social camouflage that allows you to conduct your daily operations without interference from creatures seeking excitement, drama, or entertainment from their wildlife encounters. Surviving your first major drought teaches you that weather operates on schedules that completely ignore your personal preferences for consistent environmental conditions. The drought arrives gradually, like a house guest who extends their stay week by week until you realize they've basically moved in permanently and brought their own problems with them. The initial signs appear subtle: grass growing more slowly, water sources requiring longer walks to reach, and the general sense that nature has decided to operate on a reduced budget for the foreseeable future. Your normal grazing areas begin showing signs of stress as vegetation struggles with limited water availability. The lush green landscape that supported your comfortable lifestyle transforms into something resembling a poorly maintained lawn that's been forgotten by its owners. Adaptation requires fundamental changes to resource management strategies you've spent years perfecting. Water conservation becomes critical, forcing you to extend the time between drinks and plan activities around the availability of reliable water sources. Your daily routine shifts to accommodate longer travel distances for both food and water, creating a more demanding schedule that tests your energy management systems. Food rationing emerges as an essential survival skill, requiring you to identify and preserve the most nutritious vegetation while accepting lower quality alternatives for routine consumption. You develop emergency food caches in areas with better moisture retention, creating backup nutrition sources for periods when surface vegetation becomes inadequate for daily needs. The drought's duration exceeds your initial predictions, extending through an entire season and into the next. This teaches you the importance of long-term resource planning and the necessity of maintaining contingency strategies for extended periods of environmental stress. Your territory management expands to include seasonal retreat areas where moisture and vegetation remain available even during extended dry periods. Flood management presents the opposite challenge when your burrow becomes a swimming pool, teaching you that weather extremes operate without consideration for your carefully engineered underground infrastructure. The flood arrives with the kind of dramatic timing that suggests nature has a sense of humor about architectural planning. Your main tunnel system, designed with what you considered adequate drainage, proves insufficient for the volume of water that nature decides to deposit in your immediate vicinity over the course of 6 hours. Water infiltration begins slowly, creating minor puddles that seem manageable until they connect into streams that transform your comfortable underground home into an aquatic obstacle course. Emergency protocols require immediate implementation of flood response strategies you hoped never to use. Evacuation to higher ground becomes necessary when water levels rise beyond your capacity to wait out the flooding underground. Your secondary burrow system, excavated in elevated areas specifically for emergency use, proves its value during this crisis. Recovery involves extensive drainage work and structural repairs to restore your main burrow system to functional condition. You learn to incorporate flood protection measures into routine maintenance, creating better drainage systems and emergency escape routes that prevent future flooding from becoming existential threats to your housing situation. Bushfire protocols develop from observing distant smoke and understanding that fires move according to wind patterns and fuel availability rather than convenient scheduling preferences. Your fire safety strategy emphasizes early detection and strategic retreat to previously identified safe areas with minimal combustible vegetation and reliable escape routes. Fire preparation involves maintaining cleared areas around burrow entrances and establishing multiple evacuation routes that avoid areas with heavy vegetation or topographical features that could trap you during rapid retreat situations. Your emergency supply caches include food and water reserves positioned in fire-safe locations that remain accessible even when primary territory becomes temporarily uninhabitable. The art of strategic retreat requires overcoming natural tendencies to defend territory in favor of survival priorities that emphasize personal safety over property protection. Fire moves faster than you can waddle, making early retreat essential for avoiding situations where evacuation becomes impossible. Climate change awareness develops through observations of long-term patterns that exceed normal seasonal variations. Dry seasons extend beyond historical norms, rainfall patterns shift to different seasonal timing, and temperature ranges expand beyond your previous experience. These changes require adaptive strategies that account for environmental conditions that differ from the climate patterns your instincts expect. Longer dry seasons force permanent adjustments to resource management strategies, water conservation protocols, and territorial expansion to include areas with more reliable moisture availability. Different grass species begin appearing as climate shifts favor vegetation, adapted to altered precipitation and temperature patterns. Adapting your lifestyle to environmental shifts involves accepting that climate conditions will continue changing rather than returning to previous patterns. Your territory management, resource allocation, and seasonal planning incorporate flexibility for conditions that may exceed your previous experience, ensuring survival capability under environmental parameters that require ongoing adaptation rather than temporary adjustment. Perfecting the art of avoiding other wombats reaches sophisticated levels that would impress social hermits if social hermits were impressive to people who've chosen to minimize social interaction as a lifestyle optimization strategy. Your techniques for maintaining solitude while living in areas occupied by other wombats develop into a systematic approach that combines schedule management, territory design, and strategic boring behavior. The foundation strategy involves temporal displacement, conducting your activities during hours when other wombats prefer to engage in their own activities elsewhere. Your research into neighbor behavioral patterns reveals that most wombats follow predictable routines that create opportunities for surface activities without unwanted social encounters. Early morning and late evening provide optimal windows for territorial maintenance, resource acquisition, and exercise activities. Advanced schedule coordination requires maintaining mental maps of neighbor activity zones and timing patterns that allow you to predict when specific areas will be unoccupied. This intelligence gathering happens through passive observation during routine activities, building databases of information that support effective avoidance planning without requiring active surveillance that might attract attention. Advanced techniques for discouraging visitors operate on principles of strategic disappointment and systematic, uninteresting behavior. When encounters prove unavoidable, your response focuses on providing such thoroughly unrewarding social experiences that other wombats conclude you're not worth the effort required for continued interaction attempts. The technique begins with minimal acknowledgement of other wombats' presence, communicating awareness without suggesting interest in extended interaction. Your body language conveys polite recognition, combined with obvious preoccupation with important activities that don't involve conversation or social engagement. Conversation discouragement involves responding to social overtures with information so boring that continued communication becomes obviously pointless. Detailed descriptions of grass quality assessments, burrow maintenance schedules, and weather observation data provide responses that technically answer questions, while making it clear that further inquiry will produce more of the same, thoroughly unexciting information. The philosophy of selective hearing allows you to demonstrate complete obliviousness to social invitations, while maintaining perfect awareness of territorial boundary communications and potential threat warnings. This requires developing the ability to distinguish between social communications that you can safely ignore and practical communications that require appropriate responses. Implementation involves responding immediately to information about resource availability, territorial conflicts, or safety concerns, while remaining completely unaware of suggestions for social activities, casual conversation topics, or invitations to engage in cooperative ventures that would require ongoing interaction with other wombats. Mastering the "I'm just a rock" pose extends beyond predator avoidance into social camouflage that makes you effectively invisible to other wombats seeking interaction opportunities. The technique involves positioning yourself in ways that blend with natural landscape features while maintaining awareness of social activity in your vicinity. Advanced rock impersonation requires selecting positions that provide good observation capabilities while appearing to be completely focused on rock-like activities, such as extended motionlessness, contemplation of soil composition, or absorption in profound philosophical consideration of immediate environmental conditions. The pose's effectiveness depends on maintaining perfect stillness for extended periods, while projecting the kind of deep preoccupation that suggests interruption would be inappropriate. Other wombats learn to recognize your rock state as indicating unavailability for social purposes, while remaining accessible for legitimate territorial or safety communications. Social interactions reduced to territorial negotiations represent the ultimate achievement in antisocial behavior optimization. Your communication with other wombats becomes limited to the essential information exchange required for property boundary maintenance, resource conflict resolution, and mutual security cooperation. These interactions follow diplomatic protocols that accomplish necessary business without creating opportunities for social relationship development. Communication remains focused on practical matters with clearly defined objectives and conclusion points that prevent conversations from expanding into general social engagement. The efficiency of this approach eliminates the energy expenditure required for managing complex social relationships, while maintaining cooperative arrangements necessary for successful territorial coexistence. You achieve the social equivalent of business partnerships that function effectively without requiring personal friendship or extended interaction beyond essential operational communications. The dawning realization that this is it arrives not with dramatic fanfare, but with the quiet certainty of someone finally understanding that the movie they're watching doesn't have a surprise twist ending. What you see is what you get. And what you've got is a life dedicated to grass consumption, burrow maintenance, and strategic avoidance of excitement. This recognition settles over you during a particularly routine afternoon of territorial patrol, when the familiar rhythm of checking scent markers and evaluating grass quality triggers the kind of philosophical clarity that usually requires years of expensive therapy or questionable recreational substances. You pause mid-waddle, surrounded by the territory you've spent years developing, and realize that this collection of activities represents not preparation for your real life, but your actual, complete, fully realized existence. The moment carries surprising peace rather than disappointment. There's something deeply satisfying about understanding that you've achieved exactly what you were designed to achieve. Optimal boring performance in all categories of wombat existence. You've mastered grass consumption, perfected burrow architecture, and developed antisocial skills that would impress professional hermits. Comparing your life to the overachieving kangaroos provides perspective on the relative value of different lifestyle approaches to mammalian existence. Kangaroos spend their time hopping around with obvious enthusiasm, covering large distances for reasons that seem unnecessarily dramatic. They engage in social activities, display behaviors designed to impress other kangaroos, and generally conduct themselves with the kind of energy expenditure that looks exhausting from your current position of comfortable territorial management. Your comparative analysis concludes that kangaroo lifestyle choices prioritize excitement over sustainability, social recognition over personal comfort, and mobility over the deep satisfaction that comes from perfecting a small number of essential skills. While kangaroos achieve visibility and dynamic movement, you've achieved mastery of fundamental survival capabilities without the stress that accompanies constant performance pressure. Finding peace in purposelessness requires recognizing that not every existence needs dramatic narrative structure or meaningful contribution to larger cosmic purposes. Your life's meaning emerges from the consistent excellence you've achieved in basic survival activities, rather than from any grand destiny or special mission that requires extraordinary effort or sacrifice. The purposelessness becomes purposeful when you understand that maintaining stable, sustainable existence without creating problems for yourself or others represents a perfectly valid approach to living. You've achieved harmony with your environment, mastered essential skills, and developed the kind of quiet competence that ensures long-term success without requiring constant validation from external sources. The zen of accepting boring excellence transforms potential disappointment about lack of excitement into appreciation for the profound satisfaction that comes from doing ordinary things extraordinarily well. Your grass consumption techniques represent years of refinement that produce optimal nutrition extraction. Your burrow system demonstrates engineering expertise that ensures comfort and security across all seasonal conditions. Philosophical musings on the meaning of grass reveal depths of contemplation that more exciting creatures never discover, because they're too busy being exciting to notice the subtle complexity of fundamental resources. Grass represents not just nutrition but the foundation of terrestrial ecosystems, the conversion of solar energy into accessible biological fuel, and the reliable constant that makes all other life possible. Your relationship with grass transcends simple consumption into genuine appreciation for the elegant simplicity of photosynthetic organisms that transform basic environmental inputs into the complex nutritional matrix that sustains your existence. Developing mysterious aches that predict weather transforms routine physical discomfort into a sophisticated early warning system that provides meteorological intelligence with the accuracy of professional forecasting services and considerably more personal relevance than information delivered through electronic media by humans who don't live in your specific microclimate. Your body becomes a biological barometer that responds to atmospheric pressure changes, humidity fluctuations, and electromagnetic activity, with symptoms that initially seem like random health problems, but gradually reveal themselves as remarkably consistent predictive indicators. The dull ache in your left shoulder appears exactly 6 hours before precipitation begins. Lower back stiffness corresponds perfectly with temperature drops of more than 10 degrees. Joint inflammation provides advance notice of storm systems approaching from specific directions. This weather sensitivity requires developing diagnostic skills that distinguish between meteorological symptoms and actual health concerns that need attention. The challenge involves interpreting physical discomfort in ways that provide useful information without creating unnecessary anxiety about conditions that will resolve automatically when weather patterns change. The ongoing dental maintenance program becomes a critical health management priority due to your species' tendency toward continuous tooth growth that requires active management to prevent serious complications. Your teeth grow constantly throughout your lifetime, requiring systematic wear through appropriate chewing activities that maintain optimal length and sharpness for efficient food processing. Maintenance involves balancing soft foods that provide easy nutrition against harder materials that provide necessary tooth wear. Too much soft food consumption allows teeth to grow beyond functional parameters, creating eating difficulties and potential health problems. Too much hard material consumption can cause excessive wear that compromises chewing efficiency or creates dental damage, requiring extended recovery periods. Your dental care routine includes regular bark consumption for controlled tooth wear, strategic selection of vegetation that provides optimal chewing resistance, and periodic assessment of tooth length and condition to ensure maintenance activities remain adequate for ongoing dental health. Parasite awareness and management develops from understanding that various external and internal parasites consider you an attractive habitat option that provides steady nutrition and comfortable living conditions without your consent or benefit. Effective parasite management requires identifying symptoms of infestation and implementing treatment strategies that eliminate unwanted residents without causing additional health problems. External parasite management involves regular grooming activities that remove surface parasites before they establish permanent residence. Your grooming routine includes systematic inspection of areas where parasites commonly attach, strategic use of abrasive surfaces for scratching hard-to-reach locations, and selection of grooming materials that provide effective parasite removal without causing skin damage. Self-medication through selective plant consumption utilizes your knowledge of vegetation with medicinal properties that address specific health concerns. Different plants provide relief for digestive issues, skin problems, or general discomfort through natural compounds that offer therapeutic benefits when consumed in appropriate quantities. Your pharmaceutical knowledge develops through experimentation with various plants, whose effects provide helpful responses to health challenges. This requires careful observation of dosage, relationships, and response patterns that ensure beneficial effects without creating adverse reactions from excessive consumption of medicinal vegetation. Learning to distinguish between getting old and actual problems requires developing assessment criteria that separate normal aging processes from health concerns requiring intervention. Age-related changes in energy levels, joint flexibility, and recovery times represent expected developments rather than medical emergencies requiring dramatic lifestyle modifications or treatment protocols. Downsizing your empire becomes an exercise in strategic withdrawal that would impress military tacticians if military tacticians specialized in the dignified reduction of underground real estate holdings through careful evaluation of cost-benefit ratios in territory maintenance. The decision emerges not from defeat but from the mature recognition that quality trumps quantity when your energy budget operates on increasingly conservative parameters. Your territorial assessment begins with honest evaluation of maintenance requirements versus available resources. The outer perimeters of your domain, once proudly defended through systematic patrol and regular boundary marking, now demand more energy than they provide in practical benefits. These marginal areas, patches of mediocre grass, secondary water sources, backup napping locations begin to feel like vacation homes that seemed like good ideas during periods of abundant energy, but now represent unnecessary overhead. The downsizing process follows principles of strategic consolidation that maximize retained value while minimizing ongoing obligations. You focus on preserving core territories with premium resources, excellent defensive positions, and efficient access to essential services. The prime grazing areas stay under active management. The main burrow complex maintains full operational status. Secondary positions get downgraded to available if needed, rather than actively defended at all costs. Delegating burrow maintenance to gravity represents the ultimate achievement in lazy engineering, allowing natural processes to handle routine upkeep tasks that previously required active intervention. Your burrow system, after years of careful construction and maintenance, reaches a state of equilibrium, where basic structural integrity maintains itself through the same geological processes that built mountains and carved valleys, albeit on a more modest scale and timeline. This delegation strategy involves accepting minor settling and gradual tunnel modifications as natural evolution rather than structural failures requiring immediate repair. Small cave-ins get reclassified as architectural adjustments. Drainage modifications that occur through water flow become improved engineering through environmental collaboration. The occasional tunnel narrowing transitions from maintenance emergency to cozy atmospheric enhancement. The wisdom of shorter patrol routes emerges from understanding that security effectiveness depends more on consistency than coverage area. Your daily inspection tours evolve from comprehensive perimeter sweeps to focused assessment of critical areas that provide maximum security intelligence with minimum energy expenditure. Core territory monitoring maintains complete situational awareness, while eliminating the exhausting exploration of peripheral areas that rarely produce actionable information. Route optimization incorporates rest stops at scenic locations that provide both security observation opportunities and comfortable napping positions. Your patrols become mobile meditation sessions that combine necessary territorial awareness with the physical exercise required for maintaining basic mobility and the mental stimulation that comes from systematic observation of familiar but ever-changing environments. Strategic abandonment of marginal grazing areas requires overcoming the hoarding instincts that drove territorial expansion during your prime years. The grass patches that once seemed worth defending now get evaluated through strict criteria of nutritional value, accessibility, and maintenance requirements. Areas that fail cost-benefit analysis transition from my territory to neutral ground, that I occasionally visit if convenient. This strategic withdrawal concentrates your territorial management efforts on zones that provide maximum benefit for minimum oversight. The premium grazing areas receive enhanced attention, while mediocre zones return to general availability for any creature interested in managing their own grass quality control programs. Accepting help from younger, more energetic wombats represents the most challenging aspect of senior territory management, requiring the swallowing of pride that has sustained your independence through decades of successful self-sufficiency. The assistance comes gradually, beginning with minor favors that can be rationalized as temporary convenience rather than acknowledgement of declining capabilities. Young wombats offer help with boundary maintenance, volunteering to update scent markers during their own territorial activities. They provide early warning about potential threats discovered during their more extensive patrol operations. Most importantly, they gradually assume responsibility for monitoring marginal areas that you've strategically deprioritized, ensuring continuity of basic security coverage without requiring direct energy investment from your increasingly precious personal resources. The grudging acceptance develops into genuine appreciation as you discover that delegation allows focus on activities you actually enjoy, while ensuring essential territorial functions continue operating at acceptable standards through collaborative management arrangements that benefit everyone involved. Returning to the classics becomes your nutritional philosophy, embracing the comfort food approach to sustenance that prioritizes reliability over innovation and proven satisfaction over culinary adventure. Your diet evolves from the experimental enthusiasm of youth through the sophisticated complexity of middle age into the refined simplicity that comes from decades of learning what actually works for your specific digestive requirements, lifestyle preferences. Basic grasses and reliable roots form the foundation of your simplified menu, representing the greatest hits of your nutritional career, rather than limiting restrictions on dietary diversity. These are the foods that have consistently provided optimal energy, efficient digestion, and predictable satisfaction through all seasons and weather conditions. They're the comfort foods that never disappoint, the reliable friends of the nutritional world. The end of adventurous eating arrives not with regret but with relief, eliminating the stress and uncertainty that came with constantly evaluating new food options for potential inclusion in your dietary rotation. Experimental foraging, while educational during your learning years, now seems unnecessarily complicated when you've already identified vegetation that meets all your nutritional requirements without the risk of digestive surprises or processing difficulties. This transition allows you to focus energy previously spent on food exploration into enhanced appreciation of familiar favorites. You develop deeper understanding of seasonal variations in your preferred foods, optimal harvesting techniques for maximum nutrition extraction, and preparation methods that enhance flavor and digestibility of reliable menu staples. Developing strong opinions about vegetation quality transforms from practical necessity into passionate expertise that would impress culinary professionals. If culinary professionals specialized in wild grass evaluation and root vegetable quality assessment, your standards become increasingly specific and uncompromising, as you refuse to accept substandard nutrition when superior options remain available through patient selection and strategic foraging. These elevated standards reflect accumulated knowledge about the relationship between vegetation, quality, and overall health, energy levels, and digestive comfort. Poor quality grass that might have seemed acceptable during leaner times now fails to meet the stringent criteria you've developed through years of comparative consumption experience. The comfort of routine meals provides psychological satisfaction that extends beyond simple nutrition into the realm of lifestyle stability and predictable pleasure. Eating the same high-quality foods at consistent times creates reliable high points in your daily schedule that anchor other activities and provide the foundation for maintaining physical and mental well-being through structured routine. Learning to eat slower represents the ultimate refinement of consumption technique, allowing maximum appreciation of flavor, texture, and nutritional satisfaction from each bite, while accommodating the reduced jaw strength and processing efficiency that accompany advancing age. This enhanced attention to eating process transforms meals from fuel acquisition into mindful consumption experiences that provide both nutrition and meditation opportunities. Young wombats seeking your wisdom arrive with the kind of eager enthusiasm that makes you remember why you spent decades perfecting antisocial behavior, but their persistence gradually erodes your resistance to sharing knowledge that took years to accumulate through trial, error, and occasional embarrassing failures that you'd prefer not to discuss in detail. Their questions focus primarily on burrow placement, which makes sense since your underground complex represents decades of engineering, evolution, and architectural problem-solving that resulted in what could legitimately be called a masterpiece of functional design. They want to understand the principles behind your tunnel positioning, drainage solutions, and structural integrity innovations that allowed you to create housing that has withstood floods, droughts, and various attempts at hostile takeover by creatures seeking ready-made accommodations. Teaching through grumpy example becomes your preferred mentorship style, demonstrating proper techniques, while maintaining the cranky demeanor that discourages excessive social interaction and ensures that knowledge transfer occurs efficiently without expanding into unwanted friendship development. Your instructional approach involves showing rather than telling, allowing young wombats to observe your methods while providing minimal verbal explanation beyond occasional grunted commentary. This teaching style proves surprisingly effective, since young wombats learn better through observation than lecture, and your obvious competence speaks louder than detailed explanations would. They watch your burrow construction techniques, grazing optimization strategies, and territorial management methods, with the focused attention that comes from recognizing genuine expertise demonstrated through practical application. The art of discouraging enthusiasm in the youth requires delicate balance between sharing useful knowledge and preventing the kind of energetic hero worship that could lead to expectations of ongoing mentorship relationships requiring regular social interaction and emotional investment. Your approach emphasizes the boring, repetitive aspects of successful wombat existence, while downplaying any elements that might seem exciting or adventurous to impressionable young minds. When young wombats express admiration for your territorial achievements, you respond with detailed explanations of the tedious maintenance requirements, the years of gradual development through incremental improvements, and the significant time investment required for achieving even modest competence in basic survival skills. This reality-based education helps them understand that success requires sustained effort rather than dramatic gestures or natural talent. Sharing survival knowledge through pointed grunts develops into a sophisticated communication system that conveys complex information through minimal verbal investment while maintaining your reputation for conversational economy. Different grunt patterns communicate specific types of advice: soil composition, assessment, predator risk evaluation, seasonal timing considerations, and resource management strategies. The grunt-based instruction method proves efficient for both teacher and student, providing essential knowledge transfer without the emotional labor of extended conversation or the social obligations that might develop through more traditional mentorship relationships. Young wombats learn to interpret your communications and apply the transmitted knowledge to their own territorial development projects. Advanced grunting includes warning calls about common mistakes, approval signals for correct technique application, and the occasional extended grunt sequence that provides detailed instructions for complex procedures, like flood-proofing burrow systems or establishing sustainable grazing rotation schedules. Your legacy emerges in the form of slightly better burrows constructed by the next generation of wombats who benefit from your accumulated wisdom without having to repeat your learning process through personal trial and error. Their underground construction projects incorporate improved drainage design, superior tunnel positioning, and structural innovations that build upon your innovations while adapting to their specific territorial requirements. The improvement represents genuine progress in wombat engineering, with each generation building upon previous knowledge to create more sophisticated solutions to fundamental housing challenges. Your contribution to this evolutionary process provides satisfaction that extends beyond personal achievement into meaningful participation in the gradual advancement of wombat civilization, such as it is. Observing young wombats implement your techniques with variations that improve upon your original designs creates the kind of pride that comes from successful knowledge transfer rather than simple territorial dominance. Their success validates your methods while demonstrating that wisdom shared multiplies rather than diminishes, creating value that extends beyond your immediate territorial boundaries. The mentorship phase gradually transitions from reluctant obligation to genuine satisfaction, as you discover that teaching provides mental stimulation and social connection without requiring the exhausting emotional investment of a traditional friendship. Knowledge sharing creates purpose for accumulated experience while maintaining the independence and territorial focus that define your preferred lifestyle. Your role as elder advisor allows continued participation in territorial affairs while respecting your reduced energy levels and social preferences, creating sustainable engagement with community activities that provides benefit to others while accommodating your own needs for autonomy and minimal drama. Remembering when grass was grassier becomes your favorite conversational topic during the increasingly frequent moments when young wombats show sufficient patience to listen to historical perspective from someone who experienced the golden age of vegetation quality firsthand. Your memories of superior grass aren't simply nostalgia-driven fantasy, but accurate recollections of environmental conditions that supported more robust plant growth before various modern complications reduced the overall quality of available nutrition. The grass of your youth possessed characteristics that modern vegetation struggles to match: superior density, enhanced nutritional content, and flavors that reflected soil conditions uncompromised by the various environmental pressures that now affect plant development. Spring grass used to maintain tenderness longer into the season. Summer grass retained moisture content that made dry season foraging less challenging. Winter grass, when available, provided better nutrition for survival during lean periods. Your descriptions of historical grass quality serve educational purposes, helping younger wombats understand that current conditions represent environmental change rather than universal constants. This knowledge allows them to adapt their expectations and develop foraging strategies appropriate for contemporary conditions, rather than basing their approaches on assumptions about vegetation quality that no longer apply. The golden age of fewer humans represents a period when human activity operated on scales that didn't significantly impact daily wombat existence through habitat modification, traffic dangers, or the various complications that accompany increased human population density in formerly quiet areas. Your early years occurred during a time when human encounters were rare events rather than routine considerations, requiring ongoing vigilance and adaptive behavior. Fewer humans meant more predictable wildlife behavior patterns, since other creatures weren't constantly adjusting their activities to accommodate human presence. Migration routes remained stable. Seasonal patterns followed traditional timing. Territorial boundaries respected natural geographical features rather than requiring accommodation for roads, buildings, and other human infrastructure projects. The reduction in human-related stress allowed for more straightforward territorial management, with conflicts and negotiations occurring entirely between wildlife species, operating according to evolutionary behavioral patterns rather than the unpredictable responses required for dealing with human activities that follow no logical relationship to natural systems. Nostalgia for simpler times encompasses the period when survival challenges came exclusively from natural sources, weather, predators, and resource availability, rather than the complex modern environment that includes artificial threats, environmental changes, and social complications created by increased interaction between human and wildlife populations. Simpler times meant that mastering traditional survival skills provided adequate preparation for life challenges, whereas contemporary existence requires ongoing adaptation to changing conditions that exceed the scope of instinctual behavioral responses developed through evolutionary processes designed for stable environmental conditions. Comparing modern wombats to your generation reveals differences that reflect environmental adaptation rather than moral decline, though your observations carry the critical tone that naturally develops when evaluating younger generations who didn't experience the superior conditions that shaped your own character development and survival capabilities. Modern wombats demonstrate greater flexibility and adaptability in response to changing conditions, but they lack the deep expertise and traditional skills that came from learning survival techniques in environments that remained consistent long enough for true mastery development. They excel at improvisation and rapid adjustment, but struggle with the patient, methodical approaches that produce superior results under stable conditions. Your generation developed expertise through extended practice with consistent techniques, while modern wombats must constantly modify approaches to accommodate environmental variability that prevents deep specialization in traditional methods. Both approaches have advantages, but your experience provides perspective on the long-term value of thorough skill development that modern conditions rarely allow. The evolution of your territory over the decades provides concrete evidence of environmental change visible through direct observation of landscape modification, vegetation shifts, and alterations in water availability that document the gradual transformation of familiar areas into environments that require new survival strategies. Your territorial memory serves as historical record of local environmental conditions, tracking changes in soil quality, plant species distribution, seasonal timing variations, and the various modifications that accumulate into significant habitat alterations over extended time periods. Moving from waddle to shuffle, represents the natural evolution of locomotion efficiency, transitioning from the dynamic waddle that characterized your peak mobility years into a more conservative shuffle that prioritizes stability and energy conservation over speed and dramatic movement capabilities. The shuffle maintains forward progress while reducing the physical stress and balance requirements that made waddling both impressive and exhausting during your more athletic periods. The technique modification occurs gradually, with subtle adjustments to stride length, weight distribution, and movement rhythm that accommodate changes in joint flexibility, muscle strength, and overall energy availability. Your new shuffle proves perfectly adequate for essential territorial activities while eliminating the unnecessary physical demands that waddling placed on your aging locomotion systems. Advanced shuffling incorporates rest stops at strategically positioned locations that provide both legitimate territorial observation opportunities and convenient recovery periods that allow your cardiovascular system to maintain sustainable operating parameters during extended travel activities. The shuffle and pause technique maximizes coverage while respecting your body's preferences for measured pacing over continuous exertion. The increasing appeal of longer naps transforms from lifestyle choice into biological necessity as your sleep requirements expand to accommodate the additional recovery time needed for maintaining basic functionality through the accumulated wear and tear that results from decades of successful survival activities in challenging for this outdoor environments. Extended napping schedules allow your body to perform essential maintenance functions that require deeper sleep states and longer processing periods than were necessary during your more resilient youth. Your daily routine adjusts to accommodate 12 to 16-hour sleep cycles that provide adequate restoration for sustaining activity levels appropriate to your current capabilities and energy production capacity. Strategic nap timing coordinates sleep periods with optimal weather conditions, territorial security status, and resource availability to ensure that extended unconsciousness occurs during periods when external supervision requirements remain minimal, and environmental conditions support comfortable, uninterrupted rest experiences. Joint issues that make weather prediction more accurate represent the silver lining of physical aging, transforming the minor discomforts of arthritis and general stiffness into reliable meteorological intelligence that provides advance warning of atmospheric changes with precision that exceeds conventional forecasting methods and offers practical value for activity planning purposes. Your joints function as biological instruments that respond to barometric pressure variations, humidity changes, and electromagnetic activity, with symptoms that predict weather patterns 6 to 12 hours before conditions become apparent through conventional observation. This forecasting capability allows optimal timing for outdoor activities, burrow maintenance projects, and foraging expeditions based on advanced knowledge of approaching weather systems. The gradual transition from active boring to stationary boring maintains your commitment to boring excellence while adapting performance standards to accommodate reduced mobility and energy availability. Stationary boring involves achieving the same level of uninteresting behavior through minimal movement and extended periods of contemplative stillness that require less physical exertion while maintaining your reputation for reliable dullness. Accepting help with basic maintenance tasks requires overcoming independence, instincts developed through decades of successful self-sufficiency, gradually acknowledging that assistance with physically demanding activities allows continued focus on the aspects of territorial management that provide the greatest satisfaction and utilize your accumulated expertise most effectively. Collaborative maintenance arrangements with younger wombats create sustainable systems for essential tasks while preserving your authority over strategic decisions and quality control standards that ensure work completion meets your exacting specifications for acceptable performance levels. Developing patience for young wombats represents the most surprising transformation of your aging process, as the antisocial tendencies that defined your adult personality gradually moderate into something approaching tolerance for creatures whose enthusiasm and energy once represented everything you deliberately avoided in your social environment preferences. This patience emerges from recognition that young wombats' annoying behaviors result from inexperience rather than malicious intent to disrupt your peaceful existence. Their loud movements, inefficient foraging techniques, and general failure to maintain appropriate boring behavior standards become educational opportunities rather than personal affronts, requiring defensive responses or territorial enforcement actions. Your tolerance develops practical benefits, as young wombats provide early warning systems for threats, assistance with physically demanding territorial maintenance tasks, and occasionally useful information about resource availability discovered during their extensive and energetic exploration activities that exceed your current interest in comprehensive area reconnaissance. Occasional companionship during harsh weather creates unexpected comfort during periods when environmental conditions make solitary existence more challenging than your pride typically allows you to acknowledge. Severe storms, extended cold periods, and other weather emergencies provide legitimate circumstances for accepting company without compromising your reputation for independence and self-sufficiency. Shared shelter arrangements during extreme weather offer practical benefits including improved insulation through body heat sharing, enhanced security through multiple occupancy early warning systems, and reduced stress from weather-related isolation during extended periods when outdoor activities become impossible or dangerous for solo operations. The surprising comfort of familiar neighbors develops from years of territorial coexistence that creates mutual recognition and predictable behavioral patterns that eliminate the uncertainty and potential conflict associated with interactions involving unknown wombats whose territorial intentions and behavioral standards remain undefined through lack of historical experience. Familiar neighbors operate according to known social protocols, established boundary agreements, and mutual understanding of acceptable behavior parameters that reduce the emotional labor required for social interaction, while providing the security benefits that come from living adjacent to creatures whose responses to various situations can be predicted with reasonable accuracy. Learning that being less antisocial doesn't mean being social represents the crucial distinction that allows you to accept occasional company and collaborative activities without abandoning the fundamental preference for independence and minimal social obligation that defines your personality and lifestyle requirements throughout your adult development. Reduced antisocial behavior involves accepting help, tolerating company during emergencies, and participating in essential territorial negotiations without expanding into friendship obligations, social entertainment expectations, or emotional support responsibilities that would compromise your basic commitment to boring independence. Grudging acceptance of the local ecosystem acknowledges your role as established resident whose territorial expertise and survival knowledge contribute to community stability while maintaining clear boundaries around personal involvement in social activities that exceed practical necessity or mutual benefit arrangements. This acceptance creates sustainable community participation that provides security and resource-sharing benefits while preserving individual autonomy and territorial independence that remain essential for personal satisfaction and lifestyle sustainability. Taking inventory of your life's work reveals the accumulated achievements of decades spent perfecting the art of boring excellence through systematic territorial development, infrastructure creation, and resource management that transformed a modest patch of Australian landscape into a model example of sustainable wombat civilization. The burrow network that will outlast you represents your primary architectural legacy, an underground complex engineered through years of careful planning, gradual expansion, and continuous refinement that incorporates solutions to drainage challenges, structural stability requirements, and storage capacity needs discovered through practical experience and innovative problem solving. Your tunnel system includes main passages designed for efficient movement, secondary routes providing emergency access options, storage areas optimized for seasonal resource management, and specialized chambers serving specific functions, including sleeping quarters positioned for optimal temperature control and security monitoring stations, offering surveillance capabilities for territorial oversight activities. Grass patches maintained to perfection demonstrate your expertise in sustainable resource management through systematic grazing rotation, soil enhancement through strategic fertilization, and vegetation quality improvement achieved through selective consumption patterns that encouraged optimal plant growth while preventing overuse damage to productive areas. These carefully cultivated grazing zones will continue providing superior nutrition for future territorial occupants while serving as examples of proper land stewardship that balances immediate consumption needs with long-term resource sustainability through responsible management practices developed through trial and error, learning over extended time periods. Your contribution to local soil aeration through decades of systematic digging activities, improved drainage characteristics, enhanced plant root development conditions, and created underground infrastructure that supports improved ecosystem health through better water infiltration and nutrient distribution throughout the territorial area under your management. The soil improvement projects provide lasting environmental benefits that extend beyond immediate territorial boundaries into surrounding areas that benefit from improved hydrology and enhanced growing conditions created through your construction and maintenance activities over multiple decades of dedicated territorial development. The quiet satisfaction of a boring life well lived encompasses the deep contentment that comes from achieving mastery in fundamental survival skills, creating lasting improvements to territorial infrastructure, and establishing sustainable resource management systems that provide security, comfort, and environmental stewardship through consistent application of practical expertise developed through patient observation and methodical skill development. Your legacy is one of boring excellence, a life spent mastering the ordinary with extraordinary competence. In a world drawn to spectacle, you've perfected the quiet art of routine, methodical grazing, disciplined burrow construction, and patient territorial management. Where others chase drama or burn out in pursuit of brilliance, your slow, steady contributions form the invisible infrastructure that makes ecosystems function. You are the plumbing of the wild unseen, essential and taken for granted. Your burrows aerated soil, protected wildlife, and improved drainage. Your grazing balanced vegetation, preventing fires. In a world obsessed with spectacle, you mastered the art of doing ordinary things exceptionally well. Now, as age slows you down, your legacy quietly passes to a younger wombat, not the flashiest, but steady, solitary, and respectful of the boring traditions you refined. Through patient mentorship, you taught burrow maintenance, resource management, and the subtle wisdom of restraint. Mistakes were made just like yours once were, but they learn, slowly. Your world shrank to short patrols and long naps. Your original burrow became sanctuary, masterpiece, and final resting place. One last perfect boring day ends not with drama, but with a nap that becomes permanent, your final act of quiet efficiency. Yet your legacy endures, in the tunnels others now call home, in the healthier soil, and in the superior grass you cultivated. Even after you're gone, life thrives from your unremarkable excellence. In a noisy world, you proved that meaning doesn't require excitement. Sometimes, the greatest impact comes from simply doing the basics well, repeatedly, and with care.